Well, somebody also fairly new besides me is Mac Davis to JCW. And he's somebody who you have worked with many weeks in this storyline. There's different ways to do backstage things. And I know you've always done a lot of promos into the camera with the outbreak. And you guys have done some fun skits when you went to Uganda, to get the potion and your intro vignettes, a lot of creative stuff. Now you're doing a lot of scenes, I would call them, or interviews with Mac, and which can be a little different than those other things. How do you feel doing those compared to how things were before there was a backstage interviewer? Because I know for me personally watching these, I feel like you and Mac have really good chemistry. Like the scene when you came running into him in the parking lot, where are Jackson and Abel? I can't find them. And the other times when you're getting mad at them in the bathroom when they're getting sick and you guys are going, I feel like there's a chemistry there that you guys formed fairly quickly.
Barnabas, get over here! What? Mac, have you seen them? I just had Jackson and Abel, and now I've lost them again. This is out of control.
I found them. They were siphoning gas out of my damn car. These guys got a serious problem. Every single look, they're siphoning gas out of a fan's car.
What the fuck is this?
So before I elaborate on working with Mac Davis, I have to mention this, Jeff, that week after week after week, when I look through the comments during the live presentation of Lunacy, the clips that you help produce that we post, what do I keep seeing in those comments? Mac Davis has got to be the dealer.
That is the number one guess.
Stirring the pot. He's always causing trouble. So don't get me wrong. As much as I'm not fully convinced it's Mac Davis, he definitely is on a very, very short list that begins to shrink even further over time. But his name continues to be on that list because I'm thinking to steal a little something from the Macho Man Randy Savage. I'm thinking you never know, especially what I've seen Mac Davis and his current situation with Facade. But I will say that when it comes to his current situation with Facade, would that have been possible, Jeff, if it was not for the interactions between Barnabas and Mac Davis? Because I dare say that if you go back in time and you look at a lot of these pre-tapes and the promos and the interviews in the back, who was really the first to have those unique interactions with Mac? Because up until that point, Mac was very straight-laced. He would come in, he'd ask his questions, the talent would answer however they were going to answer, and cut, we're done. Then we started to work together, and it elevated everything. It allowed Mac to be more creative and more animated, more himself. I've pulled him aside and talked to him on a number of occasions, and I've told him point blank that pretty much from day one, I consider him our Mean Gene Okerlund. And I'm not going to bore you to tears with talking about how much respect I have for Mean Gene. I met him many, many years ago. Obviously, Vince worked directly with him for a number of years. Mean Gene Okerlund was so good and so talented at being able to hit all the marks, getting over everything, the angle, the story, the characters. If it was live event promos that they had to do back in the day when they would have to churn those out, he'd hit his mark every single time while babysitting talent and leading them by the hand through the entire process. I consider Mac Davis to be our Mean Gene Okerlund, and it is an absolute pleasure to be able to share screen time with him because for me, going back to what we were talking about earlier, having individuals to react to. I've said this over the years, I'll share this with you, Jeff, is that every time that I go out to the ring, anytime that I perform live or even in pre-tapes, everything around me is a prop. The ring is a prop. The audience is a prop. The timekeeper, the ring announcer, the referee, the announce team, the camera crew. Nobody's off limits. Everybody is a prop that I potentially could utilize while I'm out there. So the same exact thing applies to working with Mac Davis. he's more than just a prop. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to minimize, how I think of him or his role within JCW, but I utilize him just in the same way that he utilizes me. And by reacting off from one another, it helps to just elevate everything that we do. He and I just did a pre-taped interview when we were in Columbus, Ohio, for the live edition of JCW Lunacy. And it was just myself and Mac, and one take's all we needed. And the reason for that is because Mac and I do have a great chemistry together. In so many ways, we see the business and the art form of pro wrestling through very similar eyes, from a very similar viewpoint. And we get along. He's a great guy, though I don't know about him being the dealer. But aside from that, I love working with him. And I know I'm long-winded, Jeff, bear with me, but I equally enjoy doing pre-tapes where it's just myself and the Outbreak. And I also equally enjoy, maybe even a little more enjoy, doing the interview style with Mac Davis, because again, so much of what I do is a tip of the hat to yesteryear. And having that Mean Gene character, you can't go much more back to my childhood and falling in love with this crazy wild art form of pro wrestling. You can't get much more just true to form than that.